Hey YouTube, Shelko04 here. Hey, today I wanted to discuss with you my thought or theory that in actuality we lost World War II but won the Vietnam War. And this is not a popular belief that I like to share with people. Uh, and it's one of those that if you tell somebody this is what you think, then they will say that you're insane. However, the argument is quite interesting and something that if I was in college still, or maybe a senior or something in high school, I might bring up in class just for the sake of conversation. So let's review. Uh, December 7th, Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. America enters into World War II. These are facts that we all know. A few years later, Japanese surrender. Uh, Germany surrenders. The war's over. We're victorious. The boys come home. Uh, America has won World War II. Or has it? Now let's talk for a minute about the Vietnam War. Uh, we get into the Vietnam War, sort of backed into it because of our supporting of French action in the area in the early '60s, well, late '50s, early '60s. Uh, anyway, long story short, we're involved in the Vietnam War, and then 1974, pretty much the Vietnam War ends. Sign a treaty, a peace agreement in Paris, and the war's over, and the boys come home, and we lost that one. Or did we? Now let's rewind for a minute. Okay, so getting back to World War II, the idea that we won the war, uh, I don't think we did, and here's why. We went into Europe, we totally decimated Germany's economic uh, engine, and for that part, most of Europe in itself was decimated. Now, what happened was, after the war, the United States implemented what was called the Marshall Plan. And the Marshall Plan was basically, in modern terms, let's call it stimulus money that we pumped back into Europe to help them get back on their feet. It wound up being about $13 billion, dollars, which in today's money is about the equivalent of about $130 billion. Dollars. Now, what happened with that money? Sure, some of it sort of trickled back and benefited companies here in the U.S., but those companies basically were selling raw materials to Europe to help them rebuild. And this is where my argument lies. Because what happened was the Marshall Plan allowed the countries of Europe to rebuild, renew, upgrade with all new stuff. We didn't have new stuff here in the U.S. What should have happened was part of the Marshall Plan should have been that companies in the U.S. got a attaboy that you helped us. Now treat yourself to a new assembly line or a new coke furnace or something like that. That didn't happen, and so what we wound up doing was we wound up outfitting Europe with blast furnaces and steel producing systems and assembly lines and factories and all this kind of stuff that are far superior and more efficient than those that we had at the time and pretty much still currently have in the US. And so, in that respect, we basically wound up giving Europe not the immediate economic foot up on us, but in the long term, Europe basically wound up kicking our asses because now they're over there making cars and televisions and solar inverters and all this other crap far more efficiently than we're able to. Oh, and steel, of course, far more efficiently than we're able to produce it ourselves. So basically, if we won World War II, then we lost it with the Marshall Plan when we basically rebuilt it for them. Now let's talk about Vietnam. Vietnam we supposedly lost, but did we? I say no, and here's why. Because we went in there, again, we decimated their economic engine, and then we left. And this time, we left, and we didn't turn around and offer them a Marshall Plan or the modern day equivalent. We just left. And because of that, Vietnam continued to suffer and languish for the next, I don't know, maybe maybe 30 years, 35 years. I think they're probably just starting to get on their feet now because of financial infusion coming from other areas in that region. Basically, I'm saying China. But long story short, Vietnam didn't get back on its feet shortly thereafter we left, and that's because we left the country decimated. So that's my thesis, if you will. Uh, we lost World War II because of the Marshall Plan, because we rebuilt and basically gave them the ability to turn around and hurt us economically. And yet we won the Vietnam War because we just exited and left them twitching in the rice paddies. I'm interested in what people think about this, and if you just want to tell me I'm insane, please do. If you agree, I'd like to hear it. If you disagree, I'm curious as to why you think that as well. Anyway, Shulka04 out. Thanks.